gusto niyo po ang latest news and events from the Philippines at the local Filipino community, Phil Radyo po.
We play Filipino music and interview guests from all around the world.
And I'll keep you updated on the latest Seahawks and sports news.
Kaya always tune in, Phil Radyo, every Tuesday, 1 to 2:30 p.m. Pacific Time on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
And in YouTube and Facebook. Salamat po.
Love food? Here are some storage tips to keep it fresh longer. Store cut fruits and vegetables in the fridge. Place in reusable containers. Keep bread in the freezer for longer storage. 40% of food in the U.S. goes uneaten. Save money, save food, save the planet. Visit Seattle Public Utilities for more tips.
Here with the Rainier Avenue Radio traffic update. You can listen to us in your car 24/7 anytime by downloading the free TuneIn app. Once you do, search Rainier Avenue Radio. And remember, do not curse out your fellow drivers. This has been your Rainier Avenue Radio traffic update.
All right, we are back. Seattle Sports Weekly is back. I'm glad to be back, I must admit. Happy 2025. Happy New Year's. And I don't know, I think from following by the rules, the no rules, you can say that up until this week or maybe last week. Really, it's just, I think if you haven't seen the person yet, you have up to this week. So, there you go. So yeah, it's been a minute. It always is, just because the football season, I would say the regular season, that is the games. But as we all know, I mean, it's the NFL does not never takes a day off, if you will. I will let you know that right now. And at the end of the day, it's all about football. But, you know, the NFL, the machine, we're gonna talk the playoffs, obviously the Seahawks, what's going on over there, and or what's not going on over there. But there's a lot going on just in the sporting world, and that is, you know, it's about the best time of the year, thanks to a couple little adjustments. The couple little adjustments is the fact the NCAA college football playoffs. I just hope we win another game. Yeah, and so there you go. And as we all know, the famous quote there. So it just dawned on me that about a year ago, the Washington Huskies were playing for the NCAA football championship. So they're, you know, within a week here against Michigan Wolverines. And it's like, wow, how time has flown and how things have changed just in terms of overall the college landscape changes within a year. I think now more so than ever, the sporting landscape changes from one season to the next. And the no other landscape changes more, I would say, more so than the NFL and the college these days. And the reason why the college now changes is obviously the transfer portal. And it's become a thing. And what I mean by it's become a thing is that coaches use it now, the transfer portal, if you will, it's basically free agency. Just that's the best way that I can say it, is now the transfer portal and the NIL put together have created free agency for college football. And I'll admit it, I'm a little behind, but it'd be interesting to see on my research, I haven't done it yet, just how the NIL and transfer portal are affecting the other non-revenue sports, if you will, college basketball. I haven't seen a lot of movement in college basketball per se. Definitely not the women's game. But I know in the men, you're seeing some of that movement. And it'll be interesting to see here as time goes on. And, the year from now, I'll probably watch this year because the expanded NCAA tournament, remember, it expands this year. And so what effect that will have moving forward next year? Will that affect the basketball? Track, I don't know, but we'll just have to wait and see. So that is a thing. And the other thing I want to add, all over the place here, that's just the way we roll. But we do have a script. We're going to talk with Corbin Smith, about football. That is the Seattle Seahawks. And man, that guy geeks it. I'm telling you. But before I get to Corbin, this Saturday, 2 p.m., if you can make your way over to Alaska Airlines Arena, it is the Kelsey Plum jersey retirement. So if you can get out there 2 o'clock, kind of a cool thing. I know she plays for the Las Vegas Aces, but it's just a thought. And she's a free agent. Would she come to Seattle? You never know. You just never know. But as I said, we've got quite a bit of discussion going on here. We will. And I can't think of anybody better than if I just said, you know what, let's just do a dump in terms of a post, what happened, pre, what's going to happen with the Seahawks. I don't know anybody else better than Corbin Smith. This guy, I'm telling you, this guy spends more time breaking down film. And it's interesting because coaches have to, like Mike McDonald, even Pete Carroll, they have to temper their answers with him. Because why? Because he's done so much film. The rest of us are in a press conference, and you're like, yo, so you've got the coach and Corbin talking about, a bare front, the A gap, and this motion and that motion. And most of us are like, whoa, we're here. We have some questions. But that's just how deep he delves into that. So the Corbin Smith, can you join us?
Hey, I'm here.
Thanks for joining the show, my brother. Just appreciate you taking the time. But before we get into everything else, what's going on with you? Where are you at? And
I'm actually at home here. I'm in Colorado, and it's kind of cold.
Goodness.
It's like 22 degrees outside. So I guess this time of year, it's not too cold for here, but
did you go on your run? I know you run quite a bit. Did you get that in yet, or is that later, or how's that going?
No, I've actually been running before like midnight. I like to run at night. So, that's some of our listeners are probably going to be like, man, we need you to start running middle of the day so we have some action come. But look, it's January. The Seahawks can't sign free agents yet or anything like that. So,
all right, let's go. Let's just start with your take. The Rams last night. You know what I'm saying? Give me a Corbin playoffs. What have you seen right now? Any surprises or what you expect?
I'm surprised that Minnesota came out as flat as what they did last night. I actually thought the Vikings were going to win that game because the Rams had beaten them early in the regular season. I thought for sure Minnesota was going to come out ready to play, and they didn't have a good game plan at all. Defensively, they were doing the same stuff that they did the first time they played the Rams, and they got burned then. They got burned again. So I felt like a coaching staff that generally has been heaped with praise this year. I felt like they came out and they did the same thing that didn't work the previous time. That just doesn't cut it in the NFL, especially when you're dealing with Sean McVay. Sean McVay is always ready to bring out a quality game plan. So I just thought Minnesota, everyone's going to point the finger at Sam Darnold. He did not play well. There's no question about that. But I don't think that the Vikings did him any favors yesterday because they did a lot of the same stuff that didn't work the first time they played against the Rams. And the offensive line really struggled as well. It almost looked like a bad Seahawks game with the way that the interior offensive line was playing. But
I was just gonna say, like, we take out Minnesota, put in the Seahawks, and we're talking about that loss. What makes Sean McVay so, and we'll bridge this to kind of, how Mike McDonald will bridge that gap. But what makes Sean McVay so good, Corbin?
Well, first off, he really understands how to use his personnel. He is excellent at finding ways to get his skill players to get open. They get the ball out quickly, so they don't have to worry if the offensive line is necessarily great by any means. They can get the ball out. Matthew Stafford's part of that equation too. Jared Goff did a great job before they traded him. They've always had quarterbacks that can get the ball out quickly, but I think Sean McVay does a really good job of maximizing his personnel that he has. And I think he just knows how to attack defenses, and he's been doing it since he came to the league in 2017 as well. He is so good at disguising what he is doing. He mixes in, doesn't have a ton of different formations, but you're going to see a lot of the same looks, and there's so many different plays that they run off of those formations, and it's something that he's been masterful at his entire time in LA. So I just think, don't sit here and say he is the most complicated coach in the league, because he's not, but he does a fantastic job of utilizing his personnel.
And so is his going a step deeper into that? Is it that then he looks at his players and goes, I've got let's take like a Bobby Wagner type, right? He said, I have a Bobby Wagner at linebacker as opposed to, who's their starting linebacker right now?
Omar Spates is their rookie linebacker. That's right now.
Yeah, exactly. So then he says, okay, if I've got this player, then I'm going to create my defense around that. So I'm not going to have Bobby obviously drop back and any of that. And I'm not going to have him rush because of the speed while Omar Spates. Is that what you're talking about when you say he really knows his personnel, then creates an attack?
Yeah, and I mostly was talking the offensive side of the football, but the defensive side, I think that Chris Shula, their defensive coordinator, I think has done an equally solid job of mixing and matching his personnel and maximizing on the strengths of his players. Like that's what coaching is putting your players in the best position to succeed. And part of that equation is looking at what they can do well and what they aren't so good at, and trying to really make the best of the skills that they have, which I think that the Rams do as good of a job as any team in the NFL doing that on offense and defense.
Yeah, I went with the offensive, with the defensive example there. But how has McVay been able to help Jared Goff in his game?
You mean Stafford?
I mean Stafford, Jared Goff, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of the reasons that Stafford has been so good in LA revolve around, as I was mentioning, the fact that they are able to mitigate the offensive line issues. And one of the reasons they started 1-4, obviously they were missing Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua during that time. They had injuries on the outside, but they also were really struggling to protect Matthew Stafford. He was taking a bunch of beatings, sacks, and I think what's really helped, Stafford was already a fully polished quarterback when they got him. He was a 30-plus-year-old experienced veteran that had a quick release, that had the arm to make all the throws, but he had to play hero ball a lot of the time that he was in Detroit, and that didn't lead to playoff success. It didn't lead to a lot of wins, even though he put up good numbers. I think that he hasn't had to shoulder all that load. The Rams have done a really good job of putting him in a position where he can get the ball out quickly, and he's got the skills guys that are able to make the plays after the catch. They've got a complimentary run game. That's what Mike McDonald wants so badly. And the Rams have it with Kyron Williams, and they had it a few years ago with the running backs they've had back there. It doesn't matter. They always find a way to keep that run game going. They're never going to be a top 5 run game usually. I mean, when Todd Gurley was there, they had that, but they're always good enough that you have to take their run game seriously and you have to take their play action seriously. Like, you have to respect that, which it didn't feel like teams were doing that with the Seahawks at all this year.
Well, there you go. Let's dive right in, and we got a lot which is fine, to go into your overall impressions first, and that, then we're gonna get to the obvious, the OC, and then all of that. But overall impressions of Mike Macdonald, his first year.
I'm leaning towards this being a success. I know there's a lot of fans that are upset about not making the playoffs, and at the end of the day, that's the bottom line. You got to get to the postseason. That's what every team is trying to do. But Mike Macdonald checked off every other box that you were looking for him to check off when you made the decision to move on from Pete Carroll. You asked him to fix the defense. The last 7 games, this was a top 10 defense, and it looks like a group that's going to be really good next year. He's got a lot of young pieces that he can work with. He came in and maintained and built on the culture. He has got buy-in from players and the coaches that he's got on staff. And I'm making sure to add that last part there because they're making some changes on that front. But he's got the buy-in, and the people that don't have buy-in are not going to be back next season. So I feel like, and he went 4-2 against the NFC West as well. That's another thing they were looking for. They went 2-4 in Carroll's final season. He beat all 3 teams in the division, albeit with the Rams win against a lot of backups. It doesn't matter. He's got to win against Sean McVay. He swept Jonathan Gannon. He beat Kyle Shanahan this year. Going 4-2 against the NFC West, that is a big plus for Mike Macdonald. So aside from missing the playoffs, the only 10-win team that didn't make the dance this year, there's a lot of reasons for optimism when you look at what Mike Macdonald did. I think he checked off all the other boxes that John Schneider and the ownership group were hoping to see in his first year as the head coach.
What was his biggest hurdle that he overcame? I mean, I guess we go OC. But I mean, you follow football coaches, and what would you say was his biggest hurdle that he overcame as head coach this year?
I think he overcame John Schneider's miscues. Look, hey, that's the honest answer here. And what you have to love about Mike Macdonald, he is a straight shooter. And, I think that sometimes to a fault, he is a straight shooter. Like, that's just the way that he's programmed. But I know that his players respect the hell out of him for it. But you look at what he did at the linebacker position. Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson were brought in by John Schneider in free agency. And Mike Macdonald only took him like 4 or 5 games to figure out, like, Jerome Baker's not the answer. So, John, let's go get somebody. I want Ernest Jones. And then a few weeks later, Tyrell Dodson just isn't the answer. I got a rookie here in Tyrese Knight that I think is ready to play. It's the conviction that he brings with his decisions, the confidence that he has in his decisions. But he overcame a horrible free agent class. I mean, you look back at the signings that John Schneider made. Nick Harris didn't even make it through training camp.
That's right.
Back to the Cleveland Browns. Both your linebackers were off the team by week 11. George Fant missed almost the entire season injured. Really, the only guy that played significant snaps for more than half the season was Laken Tomlinson. I mean, even Rayshon Jenkins was on IR, and he was a backup when he returned. So this free agent class was arguably the worst that John Schneider has had in terms of impact that they have brought the Seahawks on the field. And John Schneider or Mike Macdonald was able to overcome that, particularly on the defensive side of the football, with really shrewd personnel decisions that he made. And even beyond the free agency aspect, plugging Josh Jobin for Trey Brown and then confidently sticking with him for the rest of the season. Seattle gave up less than 20 points per game in 10 games that Josh Jobe started this year, Maz.
Wow. Okay. The elephant in the room. Let's open the door wide open and see if we can get the elephant out of the room. Was it his fault, Ryan Grubb?
Look, we'd had this discussion. You and I have been talking about this since about week 7. And I know that it drove you nuts in the press box because I was just constantly like, why are you not running the football? And where's the play action? And where's the under center? That was probably what drove you the most.
Yes.
But look, Mike Macdonald was being drove crazy too. This was driving him mad. And this is not necessarily an indictment on the coach that Ryan Grubb is. I think Ryan Grubb is a quality football coach. And I think he's going to land on his feet, probably at the college level. And I think he's going to be very successful again. This was just one of those marriages. It's almost like that 90 Day Fiance show. The first 90 days, things were going fine. But then after that, it was, well, we should have maybe dated a little longer before we tried to make this work, because it wasn't even a case where Mike Macdonald and Ryan Grubb were butting heads as far as not liking each other. There was no disdain between these two guys. But you could just tell with the body language from Mike Macdonald after games how irked that he was by the fact the Vikings game was the clincher. And everybody that I talked to indicated this, but when they had the football down inside the Vikings 40-yard line with more than 3 minutes to go, and they did not run the football there and try to massage the clock a little bit and force the Vikings to use timeouts, they didn't do the things that Mike Macdonald believes philosophically that a good football team should. You watch Detroit, you watch Baltimore, you watch the Rams, you watch these teams that consistently get to the playoffs and win playoff games. They know how to play that 4-minute offense. Ryan Grubb did not do that right, and this was not the first time that he had done that this year. So you just had two guys that philosophically were never going to make this work. And so I think at that point, Mike Macdonald realized, hey, I got to get somebody that sees the vision that I see, and this just was never going to work.
All right. We've got some candidates to go over, but I quote that, what did Mike say? When you decide to bring in a new coordinator, there's probably going to be some movement with it, he said. We want our new coordinator to feel like they have a lot of influence in their staff, and that's relating to the offensive line coach. And for our listeners, viewers, passing coordinator, offensive line coach, can you just tell us what that room is? Offensive coordinator, who's all in that room?
Well, it varies depending on the background of your offensive coordinator, because if you look at the team or the coaching staff the Seahawks have right now, with Ryan Grubb, they didn't have a pass game coordinator because Ryan Grubb basically is your pass game coordinator. Like that's his bread and butter. That's where he really made things work at Fresno State and Washington, having that dynamic passing game. But ironically, I have to go back and look at their staff, but I don't think that they had a run game coordinator on staff either, which that really surprised me with given Ryan Grubb's background that they didn't have that. So most NFL staffs are going to have a passing game coordinator and a run game coordinator. And those guys really during game day, they are just extra ears for the offensive coordinator. Like, hey, this is what I'm seeing in the run game, or this is what I'm seeing in the passing game. And they help from a game planning perspective during the week as well. And it gives you two extra bodies on the practice field that can help with a variety of different position groups. And offensive line, obviously, that one's pretty self-explanatory. It's offensive line coach. Sometimes you have O-line coaches that are also run game coordinators. They carry both titles. We saw that with Andy Dickerson, actually, his last couple of years in Seattle, that he held both those caps. So sometimes you have a coach that has multiple caps. A lot of these staffs, though, have one player or one coach that is going to handle all of these duties. And it's to take some of the weight off the offensive coordinator. When you have a run game coordinator and pass game coordinator, it gives you an extra set of eyes. And play callers want to have that. They want to have people that can give, hey, I noticed something that maybe you didn't. And then that play caller is able to transition that to what they're calling on game day. So I think that for Seattle to really make this work, like if you hire Hank Fraley, for example, Detroit Lions offensive line coach, he's never been a play caller at any level, but he's obviously been on a great coaching staff in Detroit. he's an offensive lineman. Generally, the run game is going to be his bread and butter. That's why there's already been reports that he's looking at various candidates as a pass game coordinator to tag along with him, because he understands I'm going to need somebody that really understands the ins and outs of the passing game to help provide support for me as a play caller and during the week, during the game planning process.
Is that maybe part of Grubb's downfall? Maybe when he looks back, that maybe he needed a passing game and a run game coordinator?
That definitely could have helped him, especially if you had guys with NFL experience.
Right.
Because I think that was another issue that you had coming in is you had 3 coordinators that were first-time coordinators, at least at this level. And on offense, you had a pretty young coaching staff that had several guys that didn't have. I mean, Scott Huff didn't have any NFL experience as your offensive line coach. I think it would have behooved him and the franchise if they would have had, like Mike McDonald had Leslie Frazier to lean on. If Ryan Grubb could have had an experienced offensive mind that had been a coordinator at the NFL level that could kind of balance that act between Grubb and Mike McDonald, maybe that sets it up to be more successful for him. But I don't think he had that second voice to really go in his ear. And when Mike McDonald was the only one that was making those overtures, Mike McDonald, I don't think in games was really doing that because he wanted to have an offensive coordinator that felt like he had some autonomy. But right. I do think it reached a point where Mike McDonald's like, dang it, I have to step in now. And that's not what he wanted to do.
I wonder if Kennedy Polamalu's relationship with Grubb was not optimum.
Yeah, that might be one that didn't work necessarily either. I mean, you're talking Polamalu's coached a lot at the college level, so it's not like there wasn't that chemistry in that regard. But Polamalu was also coached in the NFL a long time, and he's been in pro-style offenses. It had to be difficult for him to see what was going on with his running backs and the lack of carries in some of these games. That had to be frustrating for a guy of his reputation that has had multiple running backs that have been in the top 3 in rushing yards, and to see that the Seahawks didn't even get a guy to 600 yards this year, first time they had done that since 2017. And we remember how bad that run game was for the Seahawks then.
Absolutely. All right, Corbin, I'm going to hold you over. Do you mind? We're going to do the break because we've got this Seahawks download with you. It continues. D-Money. So what we're going to do is we're going to go pay the bills, as they say. So we're going to go on break. And this is Seattle Sports Weekly. And we have the Corbin Smith breaking down the Seahawks season and also previewing what moves they should or shouldn't make. All right. This is Seattle Sports Weekly. Thank you.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not explaining to my intern exactly what R&B is, I'm listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world.
A new law is helping people save more money on prescription drug costs. You may also be able to save with Medicare's Extra Help program. Your premium cost can be zero and your out-of-pocket expenses are low. Who should apply? Single individuals earning less than $23,000 a year or married couples earning less than $31,000 a year. Even if you don't think you qualify, you should still check out this program. Visit ssa.gov/extra help. Medicare costs are covered by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
My name is BK, International Talent Scout. I'm bringing a brand new show to you called BK Presents. 30 minutes, non-stop, your favorite in gospel music studio session. Going deep into interviews with your favorite artists, producers, and their engineers. You and your concert previews and concert reviews. Get it all on bkpresents.com.
What's up, everyone? It's your girl, Queen Bree, inviting you to come join me on Clean Greens Living. Broadcasted Tuesdays, 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, live right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. On Clean Greens Living, we talk farming, community, and ways to being healthy. So come join me and let's discuss ways to create a healthier you and a healthier community.
We must all remain committed to slow the spread of coronavirus, taking care of ourselves and not putting others in harm's way, especially those already at high risk of getting seriously ill, including people over 65 or those with underlying medical conditions. If you must be out, avoid crowded areas, stay 6 feet or 2 arm lengths away from others, and wear a face covering. Wash hands frequently with soap and water for 20 seconds, especially after being in public spaces. Avoid touching your face, cough or sneeze in a tissue, then throw it away. Disinfect frequently touched objects. And if you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and soreness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. Slowing coronavirus means taking care of ourselves while also protecting others. Even if you're not at high risk, these steps should be taken to help slow the spread of coronavirus. We are all in this together.
You're listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world. Check us out on social media. Facebook and Instagram, RainierAvenueRadio.world, and on Twitter at RainierAvRadio.
All right. We are back for the second half. And I'm telling you, just like any good NFL team or any good organization, any team, we're going to finish strong because we have V. Corbin Smith, and he's taking his time out for what I'm calling the Seahawks download. And so, Corbin, we're back at it. Man, I just appreciate you holding over for this time. Somebody asked, is Troy and also the Seahawks running back coach related? There it is. Is Kennedy and Troy related?
Yeah, they are related. I believe that Troy Polamalu is his nephew, I believe.
Yeah.
Or cousin or something. I'd have to go back and look. I don't have the specifics on the family tree, but I know they are related.
Yeah, the name like that. Okay, so let's go to the potential candidates. I'll put out their name and you tell me what, your thoughts are, whether this is a potential or more of not, you know what I'm saying? Not potential. So Mike Kafka, offensive coordinator for the New York Giants, a real candidate?
No, because the Giants won't allow him to be a real candidate. So they blocked him last year from interviewing in Seattle. I don't think it's going to be any different this time around. So I don't think they're going to get the opportunity to speak with him.
Okay. Another one, Frank Smith, offensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. This seems to be the trending pick I've heard from quite a few people.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Frank Smith, and he's a guy that's got an offensive line background. He previously was a assistant offensive line coach with the New Orleans Saints about a decade ago, and they had some really good offensive lines when he was down there in New Orleans. He hasn't been the play caller with the Miami Dolphins. I think the Dolphins would allow him to interview. I mean, they allowed him to interview for a head coaching job last year in Seattle. I don't know if that means they would for an offensive coordinator position, but I think you'd have a better chance of getting that request in and actually getting to speak with him about your coordinator job than you would say with Mike Kafka. And certainly this is a guy that has the run game and the offensive line stuff that I think that Mike McDonald is going to be prioritizing in this search.
He was offensive lineman at Miami of Ohio, 2001 to 3 blocking for Ben Roethlisberger. So he does have some O-line. Mike LaFleur, offensive coordinator for the LA Rams. Sean wouldn't let him go, would he?
Yeah, this would be an interesting one because he has been a coordinator previously that called plays. He doesn't call plays for the Rams. Obviously, Sean McVay does that. But he had this role previously with the Jets, and he didn't have near the talent to work with. So that's something you have to consider. But he's struggled in that position a lot more than what his brother, the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, has in the play calling avenue. So I don't know that he would be the most coveted candidate for this position if the Seahawks were to put in a request for an interview. But he is another coach that's on the younger side that has experience with a number of different hats. He's been a passing game coordinator before. He's been an OC in the NFL. So he could be somebody that they consider if these first 3 interviews they have, if there's not a guy that really jumps out and they want to continue their search.
Okay, we'll go through the list, and then let's go to since you know the latest and the greatest, we'll go to the 3 interviews that they've had, but we'll finish this list here. Brian Schottenheimer.
I've gotten some flack from some Seahawk fans for this because there's a lot of fans out there like, hey, we fired him 4 years ago. Why would we want to bring him back? But if you are looking for an offensive coordinator that's got a strong track record of building a complementary run game, Brian Schottenheimer's had 7 seasons where his offenses have finished 12th or better in the run game. All 3 years he was in Seattle, they finished in the top 12. 2 of those, they were in the top 5. He took that 2017 offense that finished 29th in rushing yards, and Russell Wilson was the only reason they didn't finish dead last. They didn't have a running back with more than 300 rushing yards that year. He took that team, and they finished first in rushing yards his first year as the offensive coordinator in 2018. They never finished worse than 9th in scoring offense in the 3 seasons that he was the coordinator. They consistently hit explosives. They used a ton of play action off the run game. If Mike Macdonald is looking for somebody that is going to carry out his vision to have that complementary offense where guys are schemed to be open to attack in space, I mean, Brian Schottenheimer had a year that Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf both went for over 1,000 yards in 2020. I mean, he checks off all the boxes, in my opinion. So I absolutely think that he should be a candidate. I don't know if he will be because he's been fired by this organization before, but I thought he got a raw deal then. I think he is a very good coordinator candidate for this position right now. You muted yourself, Maz.
There you go. He was fired under Pete Carroll under term philosophical differences. So there you go. Doug Peterson, former head coach, Jacksonville Jaguars.
Another guy that's very experienced, and I wonder if being an offensive coordinator would help him rediscover his love for the game, because he really looked beaten down at the end of this last journey with the Jaguars. Last few press conferences he had looked like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Can you get that love for the game back when he doesn't have all the head coaching stuff on his shoulders and he's just got a central focus of coaching the quarterback and working with the offense? And obviously you'd be bringing him back to his home state. He's a Washington native. So there's a lot of reason to think that that could be a really good fit. But he hasn't been an offensive coordinator since 2015 when he was with the Kansas City Chiefs. And quite frankly, he hasn't had very many offenses that he has been the play caller with as a head coach that have done very well since that Super Bowl season with the Eagles in 2017. I think he's only had one team since then that's finished in the top 12 in scoring. It has been a struggle for him. So I don't know that he would be the shiny candidate that he might have been at one point.
All right, 2 more. T. Martin, quarterbacks coach, Baltimore Ravens. The obvious familiarity. But he lacks OC experience, though.
Yeah, he hasn't been a play caller in the NFL. He does have prior experience as an OC at the college level, though. So you at least would have that aspect to work off of. But he has been in the NFL most of his coaching career. You've seen what he's done with Lamar Jackson as the quarterback coach in Baltimore and how he's taken a really good player and turned him into a top 10 caliber all-time quarterback when it's all said and done. If Lamar Jackson continues on the trajectory he's on, T. Martin has been instrumental in that development. You mentioned the Baltimore connection. Mike Macdonald is already going to be very familiar with him. Not a name that we've seen in this cycle. Last year, he was somebody that I heard the Seahawks may have some interest in when they were looking at offensive coordinators. That ultimately did not manifest itself. But he is a younger coach that I think absolutely has all the prerequisites you're looking for to be a successful offensive coordinator in the NFL, including the fact that he has been a college coordinator previously.
Yeah, and he was OC at USC 2016, 2018. All right, last one. Speaking of USC, this is crosstown rival, right? Josh McCown. former NFL quarterback from 2002 to 2020. So he's been around the NFL.
Yeah, he is going to bring that. You see it in Major League Baseball. A lot of time catchers end up being really good managers.
Mm-hmm.
Quarterbacks a lot of times end up being really good play callers because they've been doing that already as NFL QBs. You have the audibles, understanding the entire playbook and getting your guys in a position to succeed. The quarterback is just as key to that as what the play caller is. And he's played in some very run-centric offenses. And this is kind of the misconception out there. A lot of people are like, well, it's a quarterback. They're going to sling the ball over the place. That is not the case at all. A lot of these quarterbacks, they understand the value of the run game and how much it helps the passing game and the quarterback in general to have that complementary attack. So McCown has never been a play caller in the NFL. He doesn't have the college experience either. He's been a play caller at high school. That's where his max is at. But he's been the quarterback coach in Carolina and this year in Minnesota. And he was a big reason that Sam Darnold had the success that he did in a breakout season. I think Josh McCown is going to be a really good NFL offensive coordinator in time. Is this the right time to hire him? That remains to be seen. But that is a name that I've floated out there that I'm very intrigued by.
All right. So who are the three candidates that your sources have told you?
Well, they've already interviewed Hank Fraley, the Lions offensive line coach. They've also interviewed Thomas Brown, the interim head coach for the Chicago Bears. They are supposed to meet with Clint Kubiak, the Saints offensive coordinator, today. Of those three, you have a lot of different elements at play here. Thomas Brown's now got the head coaching experience. It didn't go well in Chicago, but look, when you're an interim head coach, you're dealt a really bad hand to begin with. And the 3 games when he was the offensive coordinator replacing former Seahawks OC Shane Waldron, who was fired in early November, the Bears saw an uptick in the points they scored, and they nearly upset the Vikings in overtime in one of those games. Once he became the head coach and he had to wear that hat, the offense started to fall apart again because the guy's just juggling so much. I think Thomas Brown is a better candidate than a lot of fans realize because he was previously an assistant head coach for Sean McVay with the Rams. He's got running back and tight end coaching background. He's done a lot of different things for being a younger NFL NFL assistant coach that would make some sense. But he is probably my least intriguing of the 3 that they have brought in. Hank Fraley with the offensive line background. If you've seen his mugshot on the Lions website, like that just looks like, he just looks like the dude that he's going to stuff you in a trash can if you don't run the ball. He's just got that aura to him that I think Mike McDonald is going to be drawn to. He's had outstanding offensive lines in Detroit. He was the only holdover from the previous staff that Dan Campbell kept when Dan Campbell got hired because players were raving about him. Really high football IQ. He's never been a play caller, but this is also a guy that I think has the prerequisites to be able to jump into that role and be really good at it. And they're going to run the ball because that's what Detroit does. He's a big part of that. And Clint Kubiak, the New Orleans Saints scored more than 40 points in each of their first 2 games this year with him at the helm. And then that offense turned into a mash unit. Every dude, the guys were just dropping like flies. Derek Carr missed 7 games. They were down to their 4th receiver by week 8. Their offensive line had a bunch of injuries. He was trying to coach a preseason roster for a good chunk of the season. And obviously the offense was not good in most of the second half. But I still look at this guy. He got his roots from his father, Gary Kubiak, who learned from the Shanahan system. He's worked for Kyle Shanahan. He likes to run the ball. He's also been an effective coach with the passing game. Kirk Cousins finished 9th in touchdown passes when he was the offensive coordinator for Minnesota in 2021. And that team was not near as good as the Vikings roster we saw this year. I think Clint Kubiak, he's 37. He's still a young coach, not much older than Mike McDonald, but he's been in the league for 11 years. It feels like he's been in the league for 20, but the guy is still a pretty young coach that brings some experience. He's been in a number of different systems. Of these 3, Kubiak would be the one that I'm most intrigued by. And I can say this, I think Clint Kubiak would be telling the Seahawks, I want Geno Smith as my quarterback because look what he did with Kirk Cousins and Brock Purdy when he was the pass game coordinator with the 49ers. He knows how to get the most out of veteran QBs that can get the ball out and make all the throws. Geno Smith, I think he would be more than happy to coach him next year in Seattle's offense.
Kind of answered that where we were going, but there it is.
I mean, doesn't it just look like run the damn ball? Like that's exactly what he looks like.
It doesn't have to say much either. Pretty much just gotta say go.
Oh no. He's like the bouncer at the club. Like you're expecting, if you have an issue with what he's doing, he's just gonna pick you up and lift you and carry you out the door.
I'm handing him whatever stuff I got. Like, here you go. You don't even have to ask me. You started the discussion, and that was obviously the next place we were going to go. Geno Smith, man, are you keeping? Well, look, let's be clear. He's under one more year, right? I think sometimes not you, but there's misinformation. Like Geno's not coming back this year. No, he's back for another year. Are you re-signing him long term? A bridge quarterback? What's your take on Geno, and how is the new offensive coordinator going to affect that?
It's January 14th, and if I had any hair to pull out, I'd be pulling it out because this conversation it's not going to go away. And look, I got to give 12s a ton of credit because there's a group that really wants to make a change at quarterback, and I appreciate their passion. I just do not agree with it because, and look, this is not because I have any affiliation with Geno Smith. If there was a better option to put at quarterback, my ears are open. I'm listening. I understand the red zone interceptions and the frustrations there. But I like to look at symptoms when you're discussing football.
Mm-hmm.
And the symptoms that Geno Smith was dealing with, a bottom 3 offensive line for pretty much the entire season, an offensive coordinator that didn't seem to be willing to adjust to what he needed to do at the NFL level, and that's why he is now on the unemployment line. Like, there were a lot of circumstances that were working against Geno Smith this year. There's no question about that. And when I look at the options that are out there, Maz, this is just my scouting opinion. This is the worst quarterback class that I've seen in 12 years. So if you're wanting to go draft a quarterback on day 3 for a developmental guy, I'm all for it. In fact, I think it would be malpractice if John Schneider does not pick one this year at some point. But if you're expecting somebody that's going to come in and start in week 1, like, I don't know who you're watching. There isn't a guy that's going to be doing that. It's got to be Geno Smith that is going to be the starting quarterback, at least for 2025. And then I look at the free agents out there. Kirk Cousins, he got benched in Atlanta. He is broken. I mean, he does not look like the guy that he was before his Achilles injury. He can't move. Justin Fields can't throw the football, so I'm not going down that road. Sam Darnold, we saw in the playoff game last night. I just don't know that he's going to be any better, and you're going to have to pay significant money to bring him over. To me, there is not a better option that is out there than Geno Smith. And I would even go as far as saying, like, hey, let's work something out to add a couple years to this contract so that we can ease a little bit of the salary cap burden this year. He's a $44.5 million cap hit. I think the Seahawks, it would be the smartest for them to give him a new contract that extends it for a few years, because I just don't see a path where they are going to get somebody who is going to be better in the next year or two. The 2026 draft class may have better quarterbacks, but I just don't think they're in a position they can go out and get somebody better. And I don't think Mike McDonald and John Schneider are interested in tanking next season either. I mean, this is my opinion. If John Schneider doesn't get to the playoffs next year, I think he is potentially out after 2025. To me, Pete Carroll's gone, Russell Wilson's gone. The buck solely stops with you, John Schneider. I think that there's going to be a lot of heat on him this year. I think the last thing he's going to do is say, let's roll the dice with a rookie quarterback, or let's bring in a journeyman who's getting paid $15 and see what happens. I don't think they're going to be doing that. So to me, I don't think there is a viable option to start a quarterback not named Geno Smith in Seattle next year. I just don't see it.
That's a great point. That would have been a good question, but you answered it. So, you put it out there. Who's under more pressure next year, right? Mike McDonald or John Schneider? And that's a good take right there. In terms of, we can salary cap the 3 Salary cap hits. Geno Smith, you talked about that, $44 million. DK Metcalf, $31.8 million. And then Tyler Lockett at $30 million. DK, can you have it your way or not?
Well, it depends what your way is. If your way is 30 plus million per year on a new contract, I've kind of changed my tune on this over the past couple of months because I think that DK Metcalf, that Seattle is a better football team with him out there. And it really changes how teams can defend Jackson Smith and Jigba when you got to worry about number 14 too. But I think Smith and Jigba is number one receiver now. I don't think that it's DK Metcalf. I think Smith and Jigba is the number one target on this football team. So how can you justify paying a $30+ million contract to DK Metcalf if you don't think he's your number one receiver? Now, maybe it's a 1A, 1B type thing, but what helps the situation is Tyler Lockett, unless there's a restructured deal or he gets cut and then comes back at a much cheaper price, Tyler Lockett's not going to be back next year. We know that cap hit. He is not going to be on this roster. That's going to create some financial flexibility that maybe Seattle can keep DK Metcalf on a new contract. But I think if it gets above 30+ million per year, I think John Schneider is going to have a really hard time doing that. And this is not a very good receiver draft class. There might be teams that are willing to float a first-round pick in additional compensation for DK Metcalf. And at that point, I think you have to explore trading him because that price point, I just don't know that he's been that good that I can justify paying that price with the other needs that I have on my roster to really get back to competing for NFC West titles and making the playoffs.
Yeah, it's interesting. You go back with, to the John Schneider in terms of doing something there. All right. So then Tyler Lockett at $30.8 million. Okay. We've got, a few more minutes. Thank you again. So let's go to that roster spots. What's the first place you're looking? Offensive line? I mean, where are you going right now?
It's got to be guard. To me, look, John Schneider made the comment last year that guards are overdrafted and overpaid, but this is obviously a hindsight thing. But look at what Damian Lewis had a great season in Carolina, and he got a $13 million per year contract. If Seattle would have just jumbled up a couple of the contracts they gave George Fant and Laken Tomlinson, that was pretty much Damian Lewis's contract, and you could have had him back. So at some point, John Schneider's got to look at this long run where this philosophy is not working. They need a stable veteran force in the middle that isn't on the backside of his career. No offense to Laken Tomlinson, but they need somebody that is in the prime of his career, like a Trey Smith in Kansas City, who's going to be a free agent. You got to spend money. Like, instead of buying somebody like Draymond Jones, who hasn't been a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro, and you're projecting by giving him a big contract. Go for somebody like a Trey Smith, who has been a top 5 guard for most of the time he's been in the NFL, or Patrick McCarry from the Baltimore Ravens. Mike McDonald's already going to know him, had a really good season in Baltimore, is an underrated player, can play both guard spots, can play both tackle positions, incredibly versatile, and he's 29. He's not an old guy. Somebody like that, John Schneider has got to reallocate the money they've got locked up in the receivers and some of the other position groups and finally put his foot down and say, I'm not going bargain shopping on the offensive line anymore. You need to go get a proven commodity in the middle, and I think you would see a dramatic domino effect on the way the rest of the offensive line played if they did that. To me, that is priority 1, 2, 3. They have got to get that stable veteran guard that is a proven commodity that has a lot of good football left in it.
Okay, so you're okay with Lucas, you're okay with Satoa and Christian Haynes battling out at right guard, and then Oli?
Yeah, I'm fine with those young guards battling for the other guard spot, but they have got to – you got to spend money on that offensive line. The draft investments have not paid off the way you hoped they would. Go get a proven player, and instead of spending money on somebody that – like, look – I'll use the grocery store example. And I do this when I go to the grocery store. Like, I'm going to get myself the best salmon they can get my hands on. And I'm going to look at the prices. Obviously, I'm going to weigh things. I'm not going to spend $80 on a piece of salmon, but I'll spend a little bit more money for a piece of salmon that I can put in the fridge for a few days that isn't going to go bad. Like you've got to find an offensive lineman, and if you have to spend $19 million per year to make it happen, then so be it. If there's been too much money that's been lit on fire, Batman style, the last however many years by John Schneider, you have got to go get a talented offensive lineman that is going to take this unit to another level than being a bottom 5, which we've seen year in, year out, unfortunately.
And that would be, don't get the farm-raised salmon, color dyed, get the wild.
Go get the real thing. Go to the Pike Place Market and spend some money and get some real, legitimate, fresh salmon. Yes.
Wild caught.
That's what John Schneider needs to do on the offensive line.
All right, about 3 minutes. So let's go the other side of the ball, right? I think the other stuff, you're gonna keep your running backs, right? Pretty much chalk there.
Yeah. Listen, that's for another conversation entirely. But look, who they hire as the offensive coordinator could have a bearing on that front, because if they would have kept Ryan Grubb, I would have potentially been like, do we want to move on from Ken Walker? Because Kenny McIntosh played really well in the last month of the season. So does Zach Charbonnet. They felt like they were better fits for what Ryan Grubb wanted to do in the run game. Does the new OC come in and have a system that's going to be better for Ken Walker? We'll have to wait and see. But that might be a potential discussion that's down the line. But for now, I'm going to say they are keeping those 3 running backs, and they're going to keep them together. And defensive side of the ball, for the most part, I don't feel like there's a lot of changes that need to be made there. I think Draymond Jones's contract is going to be the one that they're going to be looking at closely. And Roy Robertson Harris is a guy that has a big cap hit that they can open up some cap space. Do they do something with Rayshawn Jenkins? It really boils down to extensions on that side of the ball. Are you going to extend Boye Mafe? Are you going to extend Reek Woolen? Ernest Jones, you need to get him a new contract. That should be priority 1 in terms of your free agents. But it feels like they have more clarity on what this team is going to look like next year on that side of the ball than they do on offense.
Yeah, Draymond Jones is a $25 million cap hit. Uchenna Nwosu, $21 million. You're keeping him, right?
I think Seattle's going to keep him on that contract. He's had some bad luck injuries like that knee sprain that it was an illegal block on him. Look, that's not Uchenna Nwosu's fault. And I think the locker room would have some issues if you tried to move on from him. Like, this is a guy that's beloved in that locker room. You saw what he's capable of doing at the end of the season. So,
yeah, no, I agree. All right, time is up. Corbin, man, you are the man. And like you said, I think you said you were going to come back later, talk about running backs.
Well, I could talk an hour about running backs. So
no, I know you can. And so, and where can people find your stuff if you don't already know?
Corbin Smith NFL on X and Blue Sky. Locked On Seahawks 5 days a week on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, and of course written work that's on si.com/NFL/Seahawks.
Man, you're the best of the best, and thank you for hopping on, Corbin. Talk to you soon, and farewell, my brother.
Yeah, thanks as always, Maz. Appreciate it.
All right, there you go, Corbin Smith. He is the best of the best. I mean, man, get some experts, turn on the mic, and let them talk. And also, speaking of the best, D-Money, thank you for all the work behind the curtains. And, of course, this show just would not happen without you all that are listening and watching. And we're going to be a little bit more active. The YouTube, we're going to go live and some more things. So things are changing. We're moving and try to, in the name of bringing you a better show. All right, so thanks again. Mas Vida Mario for CascadiaSports.net. Oh, shameless plug. Tuning tonight on Channel 13 at 7:30. I'll be on there with Aaron Levine talking soccer. All right. Thanks you all. See you all next